it is about malignant and pressure ulcers, wound management, in fact, I should say. So when we talk about management, I know you all must have come across many types of wounds. Wound management. I'm not going to detail of the definition and all, but all you all know that primary or secondary malignant growth in the skin, which is usually ulcerated. See, just the site of the wound itself, we can feel how the patient may be feeling, how the family will be feeling about it, and especially about the dressings of such type of wound. It is really a challenging for all the healthcare providers. Same thing with the pressure ulcers also, because even if it is a localized tissue death, for many of the patients and the family, and of course in the healthcare providers, it is a challenge because dressing is another problem. For any wound, if you take dressing it properly, that's a challenging for the healthcare providers. See, see this both pressure and injuries, how it is. How can we keep the patient in only in one position? It's very difficult sometimes. And yet, in elderly patients and very debilitated patients, it's very difficult. So let us see. The principles of the wound healing is very complex because the process with the wound environment changing with our health status. And of course, the knowledge of the physiology of the normal wound healing is also very important. And so through this understanding, the healthcare professionals can develop the skills required to care for the wound. And of course, a chronic wound should prompt the healthcare professional to begin and search for unresolved underlying causes. Because sometimes, if we can resolve the underlying causes, maybe we'll be able to help to heal the wound. And it should be always requires a patient-centered, holistic care. Interdisciplinary team should be the, and very important is cost-effective and evidence-based. The ideal aim of the is to complete healing, but many times it happens or it is unsuccessful. So where the care is directed to the minimize the pain, infection, bleeding, odor, maggots, and of course, psychological trauma. And the treatment should be realistic and acceptable to the patient and the carers. So as I said, the primary focus, focus is promotion of comfort and of course the enhancement of quality of life, which already is severely impaired. So following the assessment of the problems, we have to choose a dressing regime which meets the needs of the patient. And we have to be prepared also. So many times there is no rights and wrongs, especially when we do a very bad wound dressing. Vaseline or the simple dressings can be done at home itself, that we will come back in our next slides. And of course, whatever products we are using for cleaning and dressing, it should be cost effective. And and the criteria are comfort, acceptability, and availability of the things. So the wound care can be organized under three core principles: the treatment of the underlying problem, the comorbid conditions, local wound management, and symptom control. And of course, clinical assessment, documentation, and evaluation is very important. And we have to focus of the care should be on the individual level of understanding about the wound, what they know about the wound, whether it is going to heal, not going to heal, how far they have to do the dressing and what type of dressing they have to do. And with that, the impact of that wound on their quality of life, their social, financial, emotional. So this all has to be taken into consideration. The goals of care, as we say always, goals of care of are the aims for a person's care. So it should be agreed between the patient, caregivers, and the healthcare team. So at times, the goals of care is not always the medical care. Sometimes once a patient is transferred to the palliative care, then everything changes. And particularly when the patient enters a terminal phase. So here the goal of care turns to our interventions towards the symptom control and maintenance of function without cure or control of the underlying condition. So we have to focus on the disease management goals. So when we talk about the disease management goal, the issues will be the burden versus the benefit. When we have to shift the treatment, especially when it comes to the terminal care. And of course, we have to plan properly. Whatever symptoms are there, like pain, malorder, this one bleeding, these symptoms we have to manage. And we have to ensure also that there is an adequate physical and non-physical symptom control is there. Communication is very important because we have to communicate to the family member, find out how much they know about this wound, what is the prognosis of the wound. So communication is very important because sometimes we have to give the realistic hope to them because it's not going to heal, and day by day this is going to increase. So communication, ongoing communication is very important with the patient and the family. They have to take a decision about that. And of course, the practical goals, that is very important. That is another thing. Practical where we have to do the care because all the time we cannot keep the patient in the hospital. So that is in the home setting. So what are the things available at home? We have to see to the comfort of the patient, their wishes. And of course, the anticipatory goals also, where sometimes in severe bleeding and all, we won't be able to do much. But beforehand, we have to talk to this, communicate to the patient, especially with the families, anytime, especially head and neck cancers and all, when there is a massive bleeding, what could be done, and how to do a dressing and how to mask the bleeding. These things are very important. So these are the issues usually we encounter, like pain, malodor, infection, unpredictable bleeding, exudates, pruritus, of course, surrounding skin excoriation. And you can see the psychological problems. A lot of things are there. Reminder of the disease, fear of death, they lose the confidence, depression, anxiety, social, self, family, and social isolation. I always focus on this because self isolation is something that the patient takes a decision not to go with anyone. He isolate himself, not allowing anyone to visit him, even maybe the family, only for dressings. Family and social isolation is something that they isolate the patient, and that is very difficult. See, if one individual takes his own decision, his or her own decision of isolating self, that is okay because at least they are content, they won't feel much bad about it. But when a family or the a community isolate the patient, there they feel bad. That is where sometimes they go for depression and all. Even to an extent, they will commit suicide. So here, empowering the family members, that is very important because already it has a very bad impact on the family life. So we have to educate and empower the family members. And of course, a lot of spiritual problems. So many questions will come from the patient about their meaning of living, why they are there in this world, what was the purpose, especially why God has punished me. And the people who are very religious, they won't be able to do their own daily rituals, rites. So it interferes with them. So these things are many things. I still remember one young chap, one Muslim patient, he said, I'm not bothered about this wound, but I have to do my namaz. And doctors have asked me not to move from my bed. He, he was very, very sad about it. Because the thing was, whenever he is on move, moves, it starts bleeding. So his movements were restricted. So this all is a challenge for the healthcare provider. So the wound prognosis and the realistic outcomes, whether it is healing or non-healing, can the cause be treated? And of course, we have to see to the coexisting medical condition, and of course, some drugs which do not prevent healing and some prevent healing. when we use lot of cytotoxic drugs, even a long use of corticosteroids, and so some drugs are there, and who are immunosuppressive patients are there. So this all will be hindrance for healing. So the promote that our goal and objective is to promote wound healing, prevent further skin deterioration or breakdown, promote patient adherence, advocate for patients to acquire appropriate resources, which is available, which is accessible, we have to say. And it should be cost effective also. And of course, optimize pain and other symptom managements. Then let us come to the assessment. That is very important in the healthcare provider. Normal, we can ask the patient, how was the wound? What changes he has noticed right from the starting? How long the wound was there since the time? And what makes it feel better or worse? Some days, my usually I do ask one question: what are the causes of pain? The many causes of pains are there. What are the main causes? As we all know, sometimes we forget about is that is during our dressing and cleaning. When we do the cleaning and the dressing, that is one of the main causes of the pain, because the patient beforehand itself knows that it's going to pain, and this person is going to give me pain. So that is one thing. Of course, the quality. We have to ask the patient within the 24 hours, do you feel that pain plan for caring your wound has been effective? What type of dressing we are using, cleaning of the wound, how we are doing it, the site which is affected, the severity of the symptoms since the last visit, how they are going to rate their pain, how it is now at the worst, at the best. And of course, we have to ask about any fever, any discharge, exudates, whether it was bleeding, about the malodor. Then treatment, how they were managing the wound, and currently on what medications they are, how effective it is there, and any side effects. This comes very important because the impact, the understanding or the impact on the patient. Is the wound and treatment impacting his daily activities? As I said, if I'm not able to do my daily activities, including my prayer, so it really impacts. Is the wound impacting your relationship with the family and the friend? Just the wound on the face, children seeing that side just walks out of the room. And even sometimes the patient hears them talking, we cannot look at his face, his face has changed, he's looking very ugly. And whether they need any support, whether it is from the home care nursing or in the family, who is going to care for the wound, who is taking care of the wound, and whether the patient is having a difficulty in sleeping, eating, drinking even water. And of course, the values, what is their comfort goal, the acceptable level of their symptoms. So the physical symptoms, we have to see the location of the wound, the size, the color, like whether it is necrotic, green color, yellow color, depth, how deep it is, whether it is superficial or very deep in layers, signs of infection, whether it is local or systemic, exudate, the color, the amount, presence and absence of odor, description intensity of pain. With the pain scales, we can ask them any signs of fistula on the face. The first two pictures which I have shown you, if there was a fistula, whatever the patient drinks, it comes out. Presence or absence of bleeding, and of course, presence or absence of pruritus, and of course, the condition of the surrounding skin. That is very important, and about the dressing protocol. So the nursing management, when we come, usually we say better to give a thorough bath to the patient so that all the smell will wash out. So if possible, give a thorough bath to the patient. And of course, irrigation with the normal saline. That is, so normal saline can be made at home and we can use that any amount. Syringing to remove the slough, especially in malignant wounds, we say just syringe it to remove the slough. Even if it is pressure ulcers, also syringing is very important, especially when it is a big ulcer, as I have showed you, big one, because the big slough is there. Don't try to remove the slough at one sitting because the patient will start bleeding and the patient's health is also not good. So we have to be very careful. Of course, we can give moist dressings for the pressure ulcers so that slowly the slough will remove. So any bacteriostatic drugs can be used. Usually what we use is, you all know, as in especially in palliative care, because Metrogyl is very handy and that can be used. It is available, easily available, cheap also. Layer of non-adhesive gauze or Vaseline gauzes. Vaseline gauzes can be made at home instead of buying. And apply gauze pads, which is very cheap and available. See, commercially, a lot of things are available, but it is very difficult to buy because it's very costly. A gauze pad, which is 10 meters in length and about 1 meter in width, it just costs about, if we buy from wholesale, it is just 110 rupees something. Otherwise, from a pharmacy, it goes about 200 plus. But think about a, a commercially available dressing material. One material goes about almost about 250, and that also we have to keep changing. And especially the wounds which I have shown you right from beginning, it's very difficult to manage also. So very cheap is gauze pads, which can be made at home also out of sarees and all. Next slides it will come. Secure with bandaging. Bandage is very important because when we use adhesive tape, the problem is when we try to remove, even our the other good skin also will get peeled. So we are extending the wound. So best is bandaging. Bandaging can be done. Only thing is we need some training how to do a bandaging, especially on the face and and even sometimes we can apply, use our mask. Lot of things are there which can which we can use in that ways. Okay, I'll just come to that. So minimizing pain. Pain can be a result of many causes. And of course, some of them are emotional cause also. As I said, as soon as they see the doctor and the nurse, they know if they are going to pain them. So remember one thing, please minimize their pain. It could be by adjusting systemic analgesics, otherwise in the local pain like burning pain and all that. So local applications of whatever you are having, lignocaine, sensocaine, opioids, loperamide, diamorphine, anything, whatever you are having, you can just crush that tablets. You can use that also for local um, relieving of the pain. Of course, in incidental pain, we say sublingual ketamine is good, about 0.225 2.5 mg or per kg body weight. And whenever you are doing a dressing, please do communicate with the patient. See that the patient is relaxed properly. You can say without pain we cannot do. I also agree with that. But if suppose a patient asks you, it will pain, tell them, yeah, it will pain, but I will see that I will reduce your pain to the maximum. I won't hurt you in that way. So that itself, with that just that words, the patient will feel better, confident, okay. And after the dressing, maybe the patient will tell also, I didn't feel much pain. So your communication also is very important. Discomfort and irritation from the macerated or excreted skin. So we have to protect the skin. So control the exudates. Barrier ointments can be used, especially this ostomy skin barriers are very good, which can be used so that the exudates don't flow out. Then limiting use of the adhesive dressing. Instead of adhesive dressings, we can use, as I said, some non-adherent dressings we can use. And we have to, when we have to fix them on there, especially if a patient is having a wound on the chest, okay, they can wear their own blouse, otherwise bra. If a patient is having a big wound, like a pressure ulcer and all, and you cannot fix a this one tape properly, and you feel if you fix a tape, micro tape or any adhesive plaster, the skin will peel off. Put a panties for them. So some things which can be easily manageable that we have to use. So, uh, and if it is unavoidable where we have to use tapes, you can apply some hydrochloride to the skin first. Then we can proceed. Malodor. It's really a profound emotional impact on both the patient and caregivers, and which can result in social isolation. And of course, there are limited strategies to control odor, but of course, giving a thorough bath, gentle saline irrigation, and of course, our metronidazole. It's really a wonder because it reduces the pain very soon. Within 2 3 days, I have seen in some cases, of course, it goes about 1 week, but we can hear from the patient or the family that today he had his food. He has taken food because the smell has reduced. So we can use Metrogyl. We can make a paste of it. I mean, a paste with the silocaine jelly we can apply. Injection Metrogyl can be used as an for irrigating also, because if you know the malignant wound is like a cauliflower, so it has got a lot of pockets. So the uh, Metrogyl irrigation, when we do with irrigation with injection Metrogyl, it goes inside. So that can be done. Of course, if there is some systemic problems, then we have to start systemic antibiotics. Then another thing is the activated charcoal can be used, charcoal dressings. That is also very good. And we can make charcoal in home settings also. If we, many things are that people are doing how to make charcoals. One thing, as I say, this rice husk can be removed and that can be made. Some people make out of jeera charcoal. So these things can be made out of coconut shell, they can make. So this can be used as a second dressing, but we have to be very careful because commercially available is that activated charcoal dressings. But the other thing which when we make, we have to be careful that we are not going to give infection to the patient. Then inside the room of the patient, we can use some essential oils or some aromatherapy products to reduce the mask the malodor. Exudates. Usually they experience a very unexpected drainage on the clothing or bedding. It makes them feel distress and loss of control. So as far as possible, we can use absorbent cover dressings. So number of layers we have to use. And if you are using 2 3 pads, this gauze pads, top of that you can keep, even you can use papers. Newspaper also, if it is available, that is available, it's only available, that also we can use. At least the drainage will be reduced. Then things are there like sanitary napkins, adult or baby nappies can be used, and we have to think how we are going to use it. Okay, that is a challenge for the nurses. They have to think how to apply it, how to secure it there. And these are the things. And I will be showing, as you can see here, the enterostomal therapy nurse also, if they are available, we can take their advice also. So I'll be showing something in the last 2 slides. Pruritus, that has to be treated because itching is a problem. Start itching, again the skin will peel off. So whatever medications there, we have to use it. Here I have shown this is TENS. In one of the papers, it is written about the TENS also, but I don't know how it reduces pruritus. I'm very sorry about it. Bleeding. Bleeding is another thing. As I said, we have to empower and family member about the bleeding. Anytime it can bleed. So to stop bleeding, the first and foremost thing is whenever we remove the previous dressing, see that it is properly soaked with saline. That's why I said if you can give even a bath also, so that it comes out well. So for let it be for pressure ulcers or malignant wound, both the cases. And if the bleeding doesn't stop, give a direct pressure 10 to 15 minutes. then you can go for any hemostatic agents. Many things are there, whichever is available, you can go for that. But of course, you have to cross your fingers. Sometimes when the major vessels are being eroded and there will be a fatal bleeding where we cannot do anything. So this has to be taught beforehand to the family member. Only thing is they can mask it with the dark colored clothes, sheets, whatever is available. So we have to prepare the family and the friends ahead of these possibilities. Otherwise, what happens is if bleeding starts, they will rush to the hospital. Not reaching the hospital also, after the patient will die, and it becomes very difficult. So before in hand, when we are doing communication, please do communicate with the family member. That realistic picture we have to give. Maggots, again, this is another challenge. Always, prevention is very good. Keep the wound well covered. Daily dressing, that is very important. See, everywhere they are using turpentine. I don't know other than turpentine what people are using, but one or two things I will just share with you people. Turpentine, when we use, I have seen turpentine being used, but if we use it cautiously, it is good. So 1:1 with saline also we can use. With Metrogyl also you can dilute it. Okay. Only the thing is, when you use turpentine directly on the wound we have to use, please don't disturb the good skin, surrounding skin. Take it in a syringe, slowly instill in the pockets where you think there is uh, maggots are present. And when you are trying to remove the maggot, see that there is no direct light focusing on the wound, because the maggot just goes inside, pulls inside. So turpentine can be used directly only, not on the skin. See, we had a patient who had come. So let me finish. After physical removal, see that you have already kept one basin of hot water, so that directly you're going to put all the maggots, whatever you're removing. Clean with saline. Don't send the patient with the turpentine dressing. Please, it's very irritant. So clean thoroughly with the saline and apply a dressing. And if you want to have Metrogyl or application, you can do that also, but make it a paste and apply so that that powder doesn't block the pockets. And continue the dressing for 3 to 4 days till the maggots are removed, and teach them that it has to be covered and kept. Now, one patient who had come with cancer cervix. I don't know, patient came actually from a periphery area to our unit, where we found the whole pubis area, pubis from the pubis to the perineal till the anus, it was burnt. They were asked to use turpentine, and I don't know whether they did it or it was done from the unit where they have gone from the hospital. Anyhow, they have poured the turpentine and it has burnt the skin. Actually, I have the photo, but I didn't want to show it. So, and yeah, we could see the maggots. Now, how to remove the maggots? That was a challenge for us. So, sometime back, when I was taking a session in Manipal, the Sri Lankan doctors, one group of doctors were there, from doctors and nurses had come from there. So when I was talking about the removal of maggots with the turpentine, they said they are using glucose to remove the maggots. They don't use turpentine. So I just asked them how they are doing it. So they said 25% or 50% of um, glucose. What they do is they just take it in the syringe, wherever, just drop it in the pockets, and the maggots do come out. So it came into my mind, why don't I try that? So we had taken it in a syringe. Of course, we had to attach a suction catheter because we have to just go inside the vagina. So slowly we had put it, and wherever we felt, and some places we could see that some pocket like holes because there was a wound. So we have just slowly we have irrigated, I mean instilled inside that. We waited for some time and we got almost about 4 5 maggots out of that. Then we had gave a thorough cleaning also with the saline. We cleaned nicely and applied the dressing. Of course, the patient was then admitted. I don't know whether there are some studies about that or not. Of course, this was done that time for the sake of the patient. So there is another study. This also I learned long back from Manipal only, because they were using uh, these medications, the oral medications, which can prevent maggots with, of course, the turpentine oil dressings. Okay, so how far it is, I have not used it, but there are papers on this. See this. See, this is a breast wound. Okay, so once you apply a big gauze bandage, okay, gauze pad, you can ask the patient to wear the patient's blouse itself so that it will stay. Otherwise, the bra also patient can wear so that it will stay back. When we apply a bandage around the patient's chest, it is very tightening, and every now and then when it gets wet, the patient has to remove also. But blouse or bra, it is easy for them to remove. Here, we have to clean this area, means just irrigate with the syringe inside with Metrogyl and saline, and place a kidney tray over here. So it comes out from here, because the patient cannot open full mouth. So we won't be able to clean it properly. But through this, we can clean. So we have to modify some things. This is just about the pressure ulcer. You all know what is pressure. Just I want to say some things about pressure ulcer. That is, Florence Nightingale had said, if he or she has a pressure sore, it is generally not the fault of the disease but of the nursing. Many patients come to the hospital with pressure sore, but some patients from the hospital also go with the pressure sore. That means it is our fault. So these are the causes of the pressure ulcers. There are extending cross factors also, intrinsic factors also. Factors also are there. So we have to prevent these factors. So weight loss is another thing, because there will be less padding over the bony areas. Okay. Sliding down in a bed or a chair, which we call as a shear. Okay, this is also pressure. And of course, friction or rubbing of the skin. So grade 1, as you all know, it is just the superficial. The skin change will be the color change is this, but skin is intact. 2, skin breakdown is the blisters must have been formed. This is the 3. You can see the full thickness will go till the subcutaneous tissue. There will be minimal, sometimes slough will be there. And this one now, it has gone into deep. You can see, you will be sometimes able to see even the bones also. There will be undermining. This is a suspected deep tissue injury. So we don't know exactly how much it has gone inside unless this moves out. Okay, so from underlying 3rd to 4th degree, the pressure ulcer can be. So when there is a suspected deep tissue injury, once the skin peels off, we'll come to know whether it is a 3rd or the 4th one. See, this is the unstageable necrotic tissue. This is a slough. Eschar we say usually, or a slough. Once we remove this, we will come to know about how deep it is. This is one. So we can, a lot of stools are there. There is a risk stool also, pre-ulcer period. We have to have Norton scale, Braden scale, water flow. This all you can just go through the this one, download it and see. Okay, I'm not going to details about that. The primary prevention, we have to take careful inspection of the bony prominence daily. That is very important. We have to teach the family member. The skin has to be clean and dry. Support system should be there. A lot of things are there which we can give support. Positioning of the patient and good nutrition. Nutrition, hydration is very important. We have to prevent from incontinence and moisture. That is, keep the patient clean and dry. Keep the patient moving if possible, and daily inspection. So education is very important to the family, and use always a 30-degree side lying position for the patient and the family. See, where are the pillows kept? Just have a look. These are the actually points where we will get a pressure ulcer. So always keep the patient on one side. So it has to be like right side, left side, supine position, even prone position you can give. So keep changing every 2 hours in a lying down position and in a sitting position at least within 1 hour. See, the heel has to be offloaded. This is very important. We can have water beds, we can have air mattress also, but of course for this we need the electricity also. Water bed also, how much water has to be filled, that we have to see. It should not be too tight also. When we press with our hand, we should be able to press it down, but it should not touch the cot also. Okay, so but it should press. It should be that, it should be a wave should be there, that wave movement should be there when we fill a water bed. So this we have you have nurses has to teach the family member how to fill a bed. First we have, this is the air side. Okay, here and this side we can fill with water. So once we fill one side with water, bring it closely. See this area, bring it very closely. Then only fill the other area, other part. Otherwise, what happens? You will fill one part, and next you will fill this. There will be a space over here, and this space also will cause pressure ulcers. So this is a sitting position where they will have pressure will be the. So we can use such things are available in the market. If nothing, just put a cushion also and teach them to keep both their hands on this side and to relieve the pressure, just to lift their buttocks bottom. Okay. So the treatment, grade 1 pressure relief, careful monitoring. Grade 2 pressure relief. Of course, sometimes we have to use some, even saline dressing is also okay. No need of antibiotics. Okay. Just use saline, clean with saline and put a dressing. When it is from 3 to 4, pressure relief should be there. We have to use some antibiotics, absorbent dressings we have to use, and maybe we have to go for some debridement and surgery or reconstructions. Now everything is available. And of course, when there are a lot of exudates, people are using this VAC treatment also. So that also can be used. But I have just once only I have seen about how they are using that vacuum, that applying that negative pressure. So I don't know much about it, but it works out. These are some of the dressings which can be used. Silver colloid for infected ulcer, hydrocolloid for a shallow ulcers, hydrogel for the cavities. Forms can be used for painful ulcers, alignate for smelly wounds, collagen base for epithelialization, and acetic acid for pseudomonas. But again, the cost is important, because if it is not cost effective, patients won't be able to buy. So as I said, non-adherent, our own dressings we can use. That is the gauze pad which we make, that we can use. So these are the points to remember is the culprits: pressure, friction, shear and moisture, risk assessment and monitoring for the ulcers, posturing and turning, and proper wound management. So the knowledge training of the family member, as I said, demonstrate to them whenever you are doing a dressing in a palliative care, see the patient's family is next to you, one of them, so that they can learn how to do a dressing, and they too will become competent in doing dressing. Okay, regular follow-up, realistic goals have to be given, and of course preparation of normal saline. As you all know, 2 teaspoons of salt, put it in 1 liter of water and just boil it. That's all that can be used. And of course sterilization of dressing materials. We can use old clothes and all. I'm coming to that slide. So these are the, as I said, what type of dressings we can use. So a lot of things are there. As already I said, this I have put in low exudate. This is the moderate high exudate, and this is for the malodorous wounds. Okay, activated charcoal dressings we can use as a second layer. So simple measures for wound dressings are commercially available. Gauze also is there. Otherwise, we can make out with old cotton clothes, which has to be washed nicely and cut it into pieces, make it just like a gauze pads, and we can sterilize it at home itself. And of course, Vaseline gauze can be also be made at home, which will gauzes should be smeared with Vaseline and piled and autoclave. Even a pressure cooker also we can use. So this is more cheaper. Some studies were there about using papaya as a dressing material. I mean, cutting it and putting it on the wound, raw papaya, which will reduce the smell also and promote healing. Then to reduce the malodor in the rooms, we can use ginger grass oils when we mop the rooms. So this also can mask the foul smell. Charcoal can be made out of burnt rice or hulls. Sugar and honey is used for wound dressings. Turmeric with homemade curd can be used for dressings. These are for we can neem leaves are used. Green tea bag that studies are there. It's all is it is there in the net. If you go, you can find out about these things. Uh, so I want to just talk about these two. This is a failure of a surgery. You can see the mark over here. See, this patient had come with us in this here also everywhere. See, this is the stool you can see. Okay, here is a fistula like hole. Here there is a hole, and this was a challenge for us. What to use? Very poor patient. We cannot go for the commercially ablate from convective, colostomy, mega heal, and all these things. Okay, and this was a challenge for me also. So I too was in. This was the first scene. What you are seeing after cleaning, we got this is how it is. So what we did was, can you see? This is the inco pad, which is that's the undersheet, under pad, what we use under a bedridden patient. Okay, we had just cut it. See, we had cut it around. You can see this, and we applied it for this patient. This one, what to say? This is the colostomy bags we had to apply. This was how we managed this patient. Of course, the patient was in terminal also. That was another thing. But at least till that end, we could manage the leaking. You see, because of the leaking, what happened around the patient. So we had to apply some Caraya powder with the egg white. We had to apply on this skin. Then we put this, and then over that we just put a small bandage, just like an abdominal binder. So this is one case. One more thing I will show, but I have taken only a photo of that because directly I couldn't do. I just want to ask you, can you guess where this wound is? The site of the place? Can you anyone guess and just put one uh, response in the this one chat box where it could be. Yeah, I got one. Let me have a look. uh, any response where this could be? Anal canal, anal opening, yeah, sacrum. Anyway, I'll just show you another one. All are written anal region. Okay, I'll show you one more picture. Sorry. Now you can see this is the patient's abdomen. You can see the surgery mark over here. This patient had come from Cook. This is very challenging for me because this made me to think a lot. And the patient was hardly, I think, maybe about 30 kgs only because she was not eating properly. Whatever she was eating, or it has come out through this way. You can see when this, everything was coming and this burnt the skin, the patients were very bad. Burning sensation was there. The patient was crying. The husband was crying. When I spoke to the husband told me that the surgery was done somewhere there. I don't exactly. Of course, this was done for some abdominal tumor or something like that. And after that, this wound has not healed because it gave way. It is just like a fistula. This opened up. Okay. So now you can see this is a wound now. And when he had come to down to Kerala here in our medical college, it was told to him once it gets healed, we will resuture it. But he knew that it's not going to be resutured. He himself, he told me about this. Okay. So finally, this patient was sent to us for wound management. Okay. And whenever there is some problems with the patients, some wound management or something, of course, I too go and see what can be done for this. Okay. So the whole day, what we did was we just cleaned this surrounding side. We had put Caraya powder for this patient, and then we thought what we will do. So what I did was just a simple thing only I did. I just took that Incopad which I shown you before. Same thing, that Incopad, I cut it and I put it on the around. I'll just show. See, this is how we have done. See, we just put it like this. We cut that incontinence pad, just put it around. And top of this, again, we put 2 or 3 small pads. And we put a bandage. And I told the husband, so whenever it gets soaked, you remove and you put the next bandage on top of that pad. Okay. So that day I could do only because I was thinking what can be done because that wound is like this. The whole day, very next day, because I came home, I was just thinking and thinking what I can do. And it struck me something that we can do something. Okay. Next day when I went, what I did was when the patient had come, we had put this colostomy bag. This is a reusable plastic bag. You can see this is a reusable bag. So down we had put on the bottom side after cleaning, we put this Inco pad nicely cut, of course, a little more nicely around the wound. Then we place this around. Okay. And after sometimes I saw whatever leaking was there, it was slowly draining into this bag. And of course, we gave 2-3 bags to the patient, some cuttings of this Inco pad. We showed her husband and we gave to him. Of course, they went back to Kur. And I think maybe the patient must have been there for 1 or 2 weeks. But of course, at least we were able to help her in towards the end, at least little bit of quality of life was improved. Because the second day when she came, she told one thing, now the burning sensation has reduced. I feel better. And that gave us a lot of good feelings. Felt that we were able to do something. And that is very important. See, every now and then we cannot go to the market and buy whatever we can. Sometimes whatever there is in hand, we have to use it. So these are the resources and references. And okay, thank you all so much for your patient listening. And I am back.
So you're back again. Huh? Where did you go, Stella?
Didn't go, sir.
Thank you very much, Stella, for an awesome lecture. A lot of practical points.
I hope, sir, I have
so
covered.
Arun, are you there? Are you going to ask the questions that are there on the chat box? Who is there?
Sir, I'm Archana is here.
I know, but who's going to ask the questions? There?
I think Archana can ask because I logged out in the middle, and when I logged in back, I cannot see the questions in my screen. Sorry, Archana.
Okay.
Well, Archana, you can ask, otherwise even I can ask the questions.
So you can ask because
I have the chat box with me.
If you can ask, that'll be nice.
So, okay, one of course is on communication. Most old age patients with malignant wounds fail to understand the nature of the wound, and in spite of explanation. So how do we make them accept it?
Yeah. Again, every time when the patient comes, says communicate to the patient. That is very important. Communication is one, because we think once we talk to the patient and they are not understanding, then we fail in communication. Then we'd say, okay, why to communicate with the patient, right, Dr. Nagesh?
Yes.
Sir, what do you say, sir? It's like that, na? So we have to communicate with the patient because see, it's understanding. Even if you talk to me, sometimes I feel, yeah, these people will just tell these things only. But I will just give one example of that. One scenario, we had a patient like that who had a cheek malignant wound on the cheek, on the face, okay? And literally he used to come from very far for the dressing. Why? He says, if my wife does the dressing, it won't heal. Only if the nurses are doing, it will heal it. So he used to come to the hospital. And one day, we made it a point. No, today we are going to talk to him because it's very difficult. Because wife started crying. She said it's very difficult to bring him like this. And that day, every day she will be standing next to us. So that day we sat and we spoke to him. And from the next visit, he understood that it's not going to heal. And his wife started doing the dressing, but it took time for us.
Yeah, perfectly fine. You've got to keep doing that because, people always hope that something will happen, and that's
thing will happen. Yeah.
Okay, there are a couple of questions about loperamide and ketamine, which I think we will leave to later on because this is a subject on wound dressing. We'll come back if we have time. One question is about use of raw papaya for wound dressing. Should it be ripe or unripe papaya for the dressing?
So what I came to know was it should not be too ripe also, it should not be too raw also. That's what was told to me. I think long back from Bangalore only, I forgot her name. She has done one study long back. I think it's from Baptist or some other hospital. One of the nurses, they did for a breast cancer, they have done. Okay, that paper also was there. And they say it's working out. But again, the problem is with us, we cannot use it when a patient is in the home setting. We can all do these studies and research and all when the patient is in the hospital for a long time with us.
Yes. Very true.
They have written, it was from Kidwai Institute. Yeah, I remember somewhere it was done. It was from Kidwai.
Okay, we'll give Kidwai the credit, no problem. They're all very dear friends. Okay, there's another question on loperamide. How does it reduce pain? Stella, you can answer. Otherwise, Arun, you want to come in?
Yeah, it's better. I only know that whatever the nerve receptors are there, okay, it acts on the loperamide acts on that.
Correct. Yeah. Arun, you want to come in? Arun is not there. Anybody else? All the palliative care experts here? All right, we'll have to wait for somebody to answer that. Okay, then there's a question about adult pads. They get soaked within 2 to 3 hours. So what can we do for that?
See, when there are a lot of exudates, adult instead of every 2 to 3 hours, see, even if we use gauze pads also 2 to 3 hours, we have to change it. There is no other way. We have to change it. But that's what I said. You can use even layers of paper also we can use on the top of as a second layer also we can use. I'll just tell for my mom, for my dad also, for my mom also. Okay, whenever I used to put an adult diaper for them, but that's for incontinence what I'm talking. The adult diaper, I used to keep first paper in paper. Then I used to put the diaper so that when they pass urine or even little bit of incontinence or fecal matter also is there, I will just remove the paper first because the paper absorbs the water, whatever it is, the moisture. So this I have done. And it is, of course, we have to teach them, empower the family member that once they put morning one diaper, it's not that they will remove in the night. No, they have to, at least about 3 to 4 hours, they have to just go and see whether it is already soaked or what. Then we have to remove it. More than that, I also cannot say what to be done.
It is very difficult and it can be really very trying for the caregivers.
Yeah.
Yes,
good morning, sir. Dr. Simha, sir. This is Shobha here. And good morning, sir.
Hi, Shobha.
Hi. Just to answer that loperamide question, sir. Suddenly, I couldn't unmute myself at that point in time.
Good, go ahead.
Yeah, so it has a molecular structure similar to an opioid, morphine. So that's why it causes, and it's got anti-motility. It kind of paralyzes the the intestine, so it causes ileus, and that's why it's used for diarrhea. So it has a similar molecular structure, and I can't remember exactly what it is. I need to do a bit more reading up, but that's why it produces locally the pain relief. It causes pain relief because of that similarity in that opioid structure. Is what I remember.
Very good.
Maybe I'll read up a bit and get back to Stella, and then she can share it with others.
You can do that, but in general, what I feel is that some of these questions, which are so academic, they don't really matter to the patient.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But it's good for us.
Just for our knowledge.
Yeah, somebody our knowledge. Yeah, and some of it, like old fogies like me, will forget very soon.
Yes.
Okay, but it's interesting and it's important, and anybody who wants to know, we must give the answer. Okay, you can also, Shobha, talk about ketamine. Okay, since it's bitter, oral ketamine, can it be mixed with honey or juice or something of that sort when you are using it for pain relief? And also, can it be used subcut?
This has been going on since, as far as I remember, since 2000 from Pain and Palliative Care Society, Calicut. In fact, when we got trained, when we went there for the 6 weeks training, I still remember this long line from surgical wards just for getting the dressings done with ketamine, oral or sublingual. I don't know whether Stella, I think, came a little afterwards.
Yes,
Yeah,
sublingual.
sublingual or oral sometimes. Oral we used to, I think, send with patients for neuropathic pain. So they used to mix it with tea and coffee. Is that right, Stella? Or orange juice to avoid the bitter taste. But then sublingual again, you don't mix it with anything. You're kind of give it direct.
Sublingual we don't mix it. Yeah, direct. Because it just comes
So,
1 drop, 1/4 only. So very little it is. But of course, it relieves the pain now.
Right.
And I suppose once it relieves pain, everybody is willing to bear that bitterness also, I think.
Yeah, yes, sir. And sir, in Calicut IPM, they have done a loperamide study for the this one peripheral vascular disease patient ulcer. No, for that we have done a study also, and that study was very good also, because it reduces acutely pain. I think someone has say as a topical application we can use. They have said someone has shared it.
Yeah. In fact, at Karnashaya, we also use powdered morphine tablets sometimes.
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
it reduces pain. Yeah.
It can
so
be.
So to get back to ketamine, sir, some of the points to remember, of course, somebody had asked whether it can be used subcutaneously. Of course, it can be used subcutaneously. And as palliative care physicians, we use it subcutaneously. We don't use it intravenously like anesthetics, anesthetists. So for pain relief, definitely subcutaneous infusions, the burst therapy or once off stat kind of a dose is what we use. And the thing to remember with oral ketamine is it can cause mucosal ulcers, and with systemic ketamine, we need to remember that it can cause cystitis, and with prolonged use, that is we have seen it happening. So we need to be careful when that cystitis happens. You need to cut back on ketamine, just like when you have opioid toxicity, you cut back on opioid and give other analgesics. With ketamine, if you have mucositis, you need to cut back on ketamine. And of course, treat the mucositis or cystitis accordingly. That's a point that I wanted to make.
Very good. Okay, so I think we've kind of reached the end. There's just one final question. Can burnt wood be used to make charcoal?
Burnt wood?
Wood, yes.
Yes, sir. If it forms charcoal, we can use that also. But best thing is, use it. But only second, we have to be careful that we should not give infection to the patient. That's why they always say activated charcoal. But of course, in long-term chronic patients and all, to reduce smell, they can keep in the corner of the rooms also, charcoal.
Yeah,
it absorbs the smell.
As an absorbent of
yes. In the rooms they can keep.
One of the other things that we have found, which we learned at Karnashaya, is what you said, coconut shells. They are supposed to be excellent for that, but there are various ways of doing it. Anyway, I think we have run out of time. And Stella, thank you very much. And I'm sure that if there are others who have any questions, particularly practical issues, they could send an email to either Nisha or perhaps to you, whatever, and that I'm sure you'll be happy to share your knowledge with others. And if there are any other specific things, we can always organize another session on this. So I will now conclude this meeting. Have a very, very productive but very safe week. Protect yourselves from the pandemic as much as you can, and look forward to seeing all of you next week. So thank you, Stella, once again.
Thank you, sir, so much.